Time now for news from the NCA Money Desk. Devon Murugan joins us. Good evening, Devon. And of course, it's the Auditor General's report that you've been really drilling down into, and we're talking billions of rands. And you've been having a close look at what went where.
Yes, indeed. It's casting a very dark shadow on our corruption efforts. And this was on the request of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Kimi Makwetu's office undertook a real-time audit of 16 of the key COVID-19 initiatives. Now, of that 500 billion rand package, the Auditor General focusing on the management of 147 billion rand of the funds made available for those initiatives. Now, based on what was audited to date, the AG is saying there are clear signs of overpricing, unfair processes, potential fraud and supply chain management being sidestepped. Well, we go to a few of them. I mean, the temporary employee relief scheme designed to aid laid-off workers. He said there were actually incorrect calculations done for benefits for the first lockdown period by not taking into account the actual period of the inactivity and the portion of the salary paid to employers. A high number of payments were flagged that require investigation, he says. Then there's the issue of the 350 Rand Social Relief Fund. We all remember that. That was also flagged. There's a risk that the grant is being paid to some people who are not in distress, and that's the problem there. Beneficiaries employed in government, or that those who receive other sources of income. So that's a big flagging on that front. Of course, Sally, there's the matter of procurement of personal protective equipment. That's the big one. There are delays in the delivery of PPE, he says. PPE not always procured at market-related prices. And we've heard the Treasury speak about this one. Lots of reporting over that section. Non-compliance in PPE procurement processes. AG also pointing out to insufficient controls to ensure the receipt and payment of this PPE. Again, we've heard similar concerns, Sally, from the Treasury on that front.
Yeah, you know, you would expect this was quite a new thing that government had to jump into quickly. You know, you'd expect a certain amount of margin of error, but I think it's the scale that suggests there was definitely something very dodgy going on. Incredibly disheartening when you think that the UIF funds were for people who'd lost their job, had really nothing else, and it does look very frightening.
And it's for that very reason where he says there's up to 30,000 payments, for example, that still needs to be investigated. He's flagged them.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's great that we see swift action, that the board is not the board, the top management tier of the UIF suspended so this investigation can go fully ahead. Let's take some comfort from that. And let's move now to Eskom and level 4 load shedding. That's bleak enough news as it is. But the bottom line for Eskom is perhaps looking even bleaker, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the results will tell you what the real story is, and I'm afraid it is a dark one. The struggling power utility, Eskom's gross debt has increased to 488 billion rand as of March this year. That's from 440 billion rand a year earlier. This is a huge liability for government and our economy overall. Those figures are contained in its pre-audited results for the 2019-2020 financial year, which reflected a closing cash balance of 23 billion rand. Briefing Parliament today, Eskom saying the risk of power cuts will remain until after it has completed an 18-month maintenance program. Currently, Eskom is cutting 2,000 megawatts from the grid between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., continuing with rolling blackouts that are adding to South Africa's economic problems. We've just heard there from Governor Whittles, who showed us what the implications are for places like Melville, Auckland Park. This latest bout of power cuts indeed come as various sectors of the economy are crawling out of this COVID-19 hole. So we wait to see what the weekend brings. All right, let's take a quick look to see what's been happening in the markets. Banks and miners pulling down the JSE today. It basically closed flat, with the rand unable to get traction to strengthen to the levels we saw last week. Let's take a look at the figures. and at 16.89 to the US dollar, Sally. We watch what the rand is doing against the US dollar because investors do not like power cuts, not just South Africans.
No, absolutely. And it's one of the critical things when assessing how stable an economy is. So very worrying times indeed. Thank you very much, Devin Murugan.